Good morning, all of you. Let's move ahead with the footprints without feet revision as we did earlier with the first flight, three units. And here we are going to, in the same manner, see the summary that will be sent to you in a PDF form. And that is your introduction, then there is summary, and then comes finally the conclusion. Now, always these three parts will be very important for you to go through so that every time, as I say, your learning will become easy. And conclusion also is very important part so that you can add it at the end of your answer when you write it down. Here, the story always, one or the other story gives you some message or it has some moral. Here, the triumph of surgery story signifies that the parents should not be indulgent, which may harm their children. Now, it so happens that many a times parents they are not able to say a very simple no to their children. No, yes, and it's always a big yes for the children. No reason, but it happens with the parents, and this might sometimes lead the child on the wrong path, or maybe the child doesn't become strong enough to face the challenges in life in future, or may become so very easygoing person in life. So here the parents should see to it before saying yes to any demand of the child that whether it is going to harm the child or not. And sometimes out of sheer love also the wishes of children are fulfilled to such a large extent that the child also cannot live without such things, keeps on demanding new and new things because the child knows that I am going to be fed with all these things. I am going to be provided all my dreams by my parents. So it's on both the side. Both should understand. And here the parents is also said that do not over pamper the child. Over pamper मतलब कुछ ज़्यादा ही लाड़ प्यार मत करो, that the child is harmed through this pamperness. So let's move ahead with the short movie.
Let's see what happens in A Triumph of Surgery by James Herriot. James Herriot, a veterinarian doctor, narrates the story of Tricky the dog and how he gets better. He saw Tricky one day with his owner, Mrs. Pumphrey. James was shocked to see Tricky's appearance. He was seriously overweight and had bloodshot eyes. Mrs. Pumphrey quickly explained that she thought Tricky was suffering from malnutrition, so she fed him some malt, cod liver oil, and a bowl of Horlicks. She also confessed that she fed him some cream cakes and chocolate. James realized the situation was bad. He knew Tricky could never say no to food. So he gave the lady some stern advice. However, as he watched Mrs. Pumphrey walk away with Tricky, he thought it wouldn't be long before he heard from her. Sure enough, Mrs. Pumphrey called a few days later. It seemed Tricky was refusing food and was suffering from bouts of vomiting. James had already made a plan by then. He knew that the only way to cure Tricky was to get him away from the house and into his clinic. So he came to Mrs. Pumphrey's house and suggested Tricky be removed to his clinic for 2 weeks. Mrs. Pumphrey almost fainted at the suggestion. But the narrator was firm. Grabbing hold of Tricky, James carried him down to his car. The whole household was in an uproar. The staff rushed about getting blankets, bowls, clothes, and toys for Tricky. The narrator, realizing the items would not fit in his car, quickly drove away. From his rear-view mirror, he saw the entire household standing on the road in tears. At his clinic, his dogs came rushing to him. Tricky, in contrast, just stared at them with dull eyes. For the next 2 days, Tricky was given only water and no food. At the end of the second day, Tricky started showing some interest in his surroundings. On the third day, the narrator led Tricky to the dogs playing in the yard. Tricky slowly followed the dogs around as they played. Later, after the dogs were fed, Tricky sniffed their bowls, licking them casually. The next day, when a bowl was set from him, Tricky joined the other dogs for his meal. That was the turning point for Tricky. From then on, he made rapid progress, fighting them for food and hunting rats at night. On hearing that, Mrs. Pumphrey started bringing around baskets of eggs. Then she started sending wine. Lunch became a fun affair with glasses of wine before and during the meal. Finally, she sent a bottle of brandy. James and his partner reverently enjoyed this drink and dinner. James was tempted to keep Tricky permanently, if only for the fine spirits and the eggs, but he knew that Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering. So he called her and gave her the good news. Within minutes, Mrs. Pumphrey arrived at the clinic. There was a marked change in Tricky now. No longer was he a fat, bloated animal. Now he was agile and well-muscled and kept up well with James's dogs. James carried Tricky back to Mrs. Pumphrey's car. The minute Tricky saw his owner, he jumped out of James's arms and rushed at Mrs. Pumphrey. She tried to defend herself as Tricky barked and licked her face. Mrs. Pumphrey, with tearful eyes, thanked James. She believed it was triumph of surgery.
So with this, we end the lecture over here, and see you soon with a new chapter in SS. Till then, revise the work given to you and submit the work that is provided to you every week. Thank you so much. Take care.